Wahungu and Waluke have won their case. They have won their case, but according to the Kenyan Constitution, you win a case after winning, after you are prosecuted if the prosecution can prove beyond reasonable doubts that you committed the offense. So they did not, the prosecution did not win beyond reasonable doubts. That is when we are told that you have won a case because of benefit of doubt. And if you are working for the civil service and you are taken to court and you win a case on benefit of doubt, if you are a civil servant, you are removed in public interest. So that is how it is. And I wanted to share with you how the whole case is. The whole case started and it ended. It is unfortunate that the person who did it is long died. Now Wahungu, she has a daughter who was a cabinet minister, and she's a sister to Honorable Moody Awori, well-placed person. Waluke, Major Waluke tells people that he was a major in the army. He even goes to an extent of cheating, that during the August coup, he was among the security people who escorted President Moi from Kabarak to Nairobi. He says that he was a major, and he confuses people because in the military and even police, you can get some places where you have two names and people try to use the senior name. For example, there is Inspector General. There are three types of inspectors. There are even four. There is Sub-Inspector, there is Inspector, there is Chief Inspector, and then there is Inspector General. So you find that you cannot call the Inspector General Inspector. You'd rather call him a General. So in the army, there are three types of majors. There is Sergeant Major, who is below the rank of Inspector of Police. And just to differentiate between Sergeant Major and a Major, because the final Major is called Major General. That one is even beyond the clouds. Now, Sergeant Major has his or her badge of rank is like a watch, and this is called Sergeant, Sir. So people pronounce it as if it is a watch, Sergeant Major. So you say Sir Major, and to differentiate them, the military usually call the Sergeant Major Sir Major. That is the rank that Waluke was. He is below the inspector, but he was saying that he was a major. Major is, leave alone chief inspector. Yeah, major is like an OCPD. Major is like an OCPD. So that is the clarification I wanted to make. When it comes to Jacob Juma, I went to the same school with him, Bungoma High School, but he was a very young boy, because me, I went there for Form 5 and Form 6. And he later joined that school during 844. Actually, his guardian, Jirongo is my age mate. So I could say that if I were the one who had deep pockets or anything, I may have been his guardian. Yeah, we have had people who have briefcase. We have people who have briefcase companies. Jacob Juma had so many briefcase companies. You'll find such a person has 20 or so briefcase companies, some which are dormant. You see, a person of that level with a dormant company It is there placed for a deliberate move. You may have a company on my level which is dormant. Maybe you start a security company and you don't get compounds to guard. What happens if you don't get compounds to guard? Your security company becomes a briefcase company. Or you may have a construction company and you don't get people to hire you to construct roads or even buildings for them. But when you find somebody with 10 or so briefcase companies that is all over, find that there is this company there is this company that is a security company, this is a construction company, this is a hospitality company. There are even some companies which are started for the purpose of shares. Today, you'll find that when you go to look for a company like Vipingo Hotel, you'll find that Vipingo Hotel is owned by another company. Now, if that is if you are going to pry, you go to the register of companies and you want to know who owns a company like Vipingo company. You'll just find that it is owned by such and such a company. And when you go and look at the name of the other company, it does nothing. But if you continue again to recheck that second company, you'll find that it is owned by JI-TENGE and JI-TENGE. So that is how people do that. And you find that they have so many companies which are dummy, but they are for such deals. And Jacob Juma was very good in such a thing. Now, Jacob Juma had several companies, including one which was supposed to supply cereals. They were supposed to supply cereals to schools, to everything and whatever. Now you see, Jacob Juma and others of the type, they start that company, they start such a company. We have some companies which are supposed to be strictly, like, I don't think you can start a medical company if you don't have, if you are not a trained nurse, trained clinic officer, trained doctor, something like that. I don't think you can start such a company. But then we have other companies where you just start at supply and whatever. Then you write in the articles of the company, you write so many things that are confusing. For example, you may say that I'm trying to look for you supply chain supply or something. Is there those funny names? Or logistic company? Yeah, it's the name logistic I was trying to look for. So you write and say this company is a logistic company. Tomorrow you go to KEMSA and you're supposed to supply medicine to various hospitals. Another thing, you find that there is the school feeding program. You come and say mine is a logistic company, and you see a logistic company that supplies food is not supposed to be on the same level with the logistic company that supplies. So they usually place it there. And for you to have not a security, police haijaisha. For you to have a company, there is this thing that is called articles of association and memorandum. This is the definition of a company. For example, you can say mine will be a school. So next time, if you are found with the buildings, you have converted the dormitories into wards, you have gone wrong. So what they usually do is that they place there, they use some wordings. They are used to that. You see, it may not come to my mind, that it may not come to our mind, but they are used to that. I just given an example where they say that this is a logistic company. This is a logistic company. So they do that. So they started a company, logistic supply and demand chain or something like that. You know, those funny name that if you are opening a tender, you'll just see that it is part of what you really want to do. So they started that company. And then there was a food shortage. There's a food shortage. You see, if you are corrupted, you're in the government. You don't have to look for ways of. You just stay there, listening. Anything that crops up suddenly, you come and take it up and you get something. So there was a shortage of maize in Kenya. There was a shortage of maize in Kenya, and these people have connection. And even when they don't have connection, you may be somebody somewhere in charge of something, and then they just come to you and say, okay, in Kenya, I'm trying to give an example of this particular case. There was a shortage, a great shortage of maize in Kenya, and they were expecting um, another maize in maybe 3 months. So somebody comes to the office, meets you, says, do you know what? You say, no, I don't know. We can organize so that when tenders are opened for supply of maize to the country, my company will supply so many tons of maize. It will be so many tons of maize, which will be uh, which will go to the National Cereals and Produce Board so as to address the shortfall. You see, Kenya has a shortfall of, say, so many tons of maize. So we need so many tons of maize in Kenya, and I can place that. Then you are told for you're going to get 20 million shillings. So you are given 20 millions, you open the tender, and that is what actually happened. You open the tender with knowing that Jacob Juma's company is the one which will win the tender. Now, when Jacob Juma's company won the tender, the problem, the issue is placed there in such a way that the thing is placed in such a way that uh, for you who is dealing with the national cereals and produce, for example, because of maize, uh, you go and place there the tender maybe after 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, you go and you are supposed to, that is, after 2 weeks is when it is now, it appears in the newspaper, in the press with a tender. And then you give people 21 days. You give people 21 days to apply for the tender to supply National Cereals and Produce Board with maize, so many tons. So after that 21 days, you have another 2 weeks, 2 weeks to open the tender and do ABCD. Then after 2 weeks of whatever, you get 1 week to decide which company has been given. You decide which company is to supply the maize. Now, if the drought is so long, the company may bring in the maize, and you see, uh, there is if you bring things to Kenya, you are supposed to pay taxes for those things. Maize is produced in Kenya, so you find that either it will be revalued at the port, so that instead of paying so much instead of paying so much money in taxation, maybe you will pay little or nothing. Or even the officer who is there will declare that this is an emergency case, so you don't pay taxes. Where you're supposed to pay taxes of 500 million, you have given this person 10 million shillings, and the government gets nothing. But then that is how they usually happen. But I'm talking of a situation where this particular situation of Jacob Juma, Waluke, and Wahungu. So Wahungu won. Wahungu, Waluke, and Jacob Juma won the tender. They were supposed to supply so many tons of maize to Kenya. They were supposed to supply so many tons to Kenya of maize. And I've just given you an example of how this thing took ages from the time when it was advertised. Because when you talk to somebody and tell him, I'm giving you 10 million shillings, you don't give the whole board, you only give that person, maybe the CEO. And the CEO will now call a board meeting. When they call the board meeting sits and deliberates, and then the board decides ABCD. Yeah, I've already said that, but it will take time. It will take time for that thing to appear in the press as tender. And then when it has appeared, then it will also take time for the tenders to be opened. And when the tenders are open, you win the tender, then you are supposed to supply so many tons of maize. So when it reached a time for them to supply maize, they were informed that we don't want your maize. They were informed that we don't want your maize because it is now harvest time. Remember, I told you that such a thing happens 3 months to the next harvest. Remember, maize takes very short time to mature. So this thing is supposed to be made in such a way that by the time you everything is taken into consideration, the tendering, the whatever, opening the tender and whatever, it is already 3 months. And so National Cereal Board now turns to you and they ask how they don't see why they should buy maize, first of all, from outside when we are now having a bumper harvest from Kitale. So they call you, and say, we have done what? We have cancelled that. We have cancelled that. No longer that. Because we cannot buy maize at a kilo at 50 shillings when we can buy such a 35 shillings from Kenyans. And in fact, even if you supply it at 30 shillings and Kenyan maize is ready at 35, it is upon the cereal board to buy from the Kenyan, because they are not supposed to encourage the importation of cheap produce into Kenya. So what happened is that Jacob Juma was called, and you see, he was the one who was doing that alone. He was called and he was told, your company should not supply the maize because your company should not supply maize because the harvest has come and you can get cheaper maize from Kitale. So we are sorry, we can't do that. He said, oh, yeah. Then he took the government to court. But you see, there is something that is called ADR. ADR is Alternative Dispute Resolution. In many cases, when you enter into a business deal, you usually say that in order to avoid cases taking ages in court, in the case of any dispute, let us give a priority to alternative dispute resolution. So what they did that they went to what do you call? They went to alternative dispute resolution. Imagine the CEO had already been given 10 million. I'm not saying 10 million, but I'm only giving these figures I'm giving are for us to understand, to get the picture. I don't have the whole idea. I mean the whole figures. But let's say that the CEO was given 10 million so that he gave them the tender. And then later, the CEO becomes very, very patriotic, and very, very patriotic in inverted commas, becomes very patriotic, saying that he cannot buy a kilo of maize from you and a kilo of corn from you at 50 shillings when he has farmers in Kitale who can buy it, who can sell it to him at 35 shillings. Even if you import cheap maize at 30 shillings and Kitale farmers want 35, he has to buy from the Kitale farmers first. So Jacob Juma was told, I'm sorry, your business, we cannot deal with you because there is a bumper harvest. So what you do, we are not taking it. Then Jacob Juma was annoyed, and annoyed, I'm saying with inverted commas, he pretended to be annoyed. Sasa sijui nini. But the ADR says that you have to look for alternative dispute resolution. You have to look for alternative dispute resolution before you go to court. So they went to an arbitrator. We have people who are called arbitrators. Majority of the arbitrators are have got law, not just a law degree. We have even others with certificate in law. An arbitrator is just somebody who can do the work of mzee wa mtaa, but at a higher level. So the arbitrator sat with them, and with the arbitrator, you just pass a judgment like any court of law. The intention of ADR or arbitrator is for the people who are concerned to come up together and agree or whatever, and then when you agree, you sign. So this is this is what Jacob Juma did. He said that he bought maize after being given that job, placed them in a store in Cape Town. When he kept it in the store in Cape Town, then what he did was, as he was bringing them, it was in the ship. As he was bringing them to Mombasa, when the ship was between Cape Town and Madagascar, somewhere there, it is called, there is a channel there. As we reached there, we were told that Kenya does not need more maize. The maize, it is out of use. So you could not take it back to, if you take it back to Cape Town, you'll have to look for a store. You have to look for a store and place it there. And the people, you see, Jacob Juma claimed, and he had receipts. You see, these computer days, you can produce any receipt. So he produced a receipt showing that he had bought maize. I think he bought maize in South Africa. He bought maize in South Africa, then took it to a certain place where there is a warehouse and placed it there. So he spent so much money buying the maize, and then he spent so much money in storage, because there was a big silo in Cape Town where he placed the maize there for some times. And then he hired a ship. He hired a ship to transport the maize from Cape Town all the way to Mombasa. Now, let us say A is the money he paid those people, South African farmers, with maize. B, there is the silo in Cape Town where he had placed the maize, so he paid something to those people. 3, he had paid a shipping company to bring the maize from Cape Town to Mombasa. And on the way, he was told that his maize is not needed, and then he offloaded the maize into the Indian Ocean. Because if he had to take it to Mozambique, nobody was going to buy it. He was to give it out free. And even taking the ship from the Mozambique, is it called Mozambican Channel, or is it Madagascar Channel? If he was to take the maize any other extra kilometer, he would still be adding hasara juu ya hasara. And since he didn't want to add hasara juu ya hasara, he had spent so much money, A, B, C, D. Pesa ya kulipa the farmers who had harvested, pesa ya kulipa silo in, and pesa ya kulipa hiyo ship from Cape Town to Madagascar. So this arbitrator the arbitrator talked to Waluke, not Waluke, we talked to Jacob Juma. The company was owned by 3 people, Wahungu, Waluke, and Jacob Juma. So this fellow talked to the arbitrator, talked to them. If the national cereal can reimburse you so much money, are you ready to forget the asara ulienda? Sema yes. And who is National Cereals and Produce? The CEO, whom they already planned from the day, whom for lack of any other example, I just said maybe he's been given 10 million. Then he's given an additional money, let's say 5, so it becomes 15 million. So they write, and they usually write a letter there saying, we are not accepting liability or anything, but since the arbitrator has decided that the National Cereals and Produce Board pays this company so much money because it had won the tender of supply of maize, and it had even bought the maize in South Africa. It had placed the maize in a silo in South Africa, and then it had even hired a ship. So we have agreed that if we pay this company so much money, it will never take us to court and the case ends there. Isn't it? Yeah. Then the case ended there. No, it didn't end there. You know, at CID training school, you are taught there is nothing like a perfect crime. There is nothing like a perfect crime. There, you always leave fingerprints. So they agreed, and the company was paid, handsomely paid. You know, the company belongs to the three. So Waluke and Wahungu are called. Unajua kampuni yetu imepata profit ya so much money. Na uko na share ngapi, uko na share ngapi. And then you'll also find that if you are to join such a company, this Sungura Mjanja has, let's say, 100 shares. So it is quite possible. I don't know how many shares that company has, but it is quite possible that Waluke may, out of 100 shares, Waluke may have had 2, and Wahungu may have had 2. And then Jacob Juma has 96. Is it 90? Yeah, 96 of the shares. So he says, okay, our company was given 2 billion by National Cereals Board because of a deal gone bad, and you have 2%. Chukua hiyo, we chukua 2%, and Jacob Juma ate the rest. Well, they say that when I was young, after school, we used to be told that work hard. So many vijana muongeze pia bidii, mwisho wa kusoma mutapata. Nowadays, our days used to be told work hard. Nowadays, they say work smart. So after working this smart, they got a lot of money, and the thing seems to happen to have ended there. No, but it did not end there. As I've just said, in CID training school, you are told fingerprints. You must always leave fingerprints there. Nowadays, there's even what do you call DNA. So you proving nowadays they even not like us. Nowadays they are so much assisted by technology. So hiyo kitu ikaisha namna hiyo, or so they thought. And then one day a detective from anti-corruption boarded a plane. The fare, the transport was paid for. The going there, accommodation, the allowances, everything was paid off by the anti-corruption. The detective went to Cape Town. You see, in some towns, including Uganda, they usually have addresses that are given numbers. 77, like the Prime Minister of Britain stays in 10th Downing Street. Nairobi also started that system. If you go around Nairobi, you'll find buildings with numbers, the CBD, but not outside the CBD. So these anti-corruption people were checking files on how the government paid Jacob Juma's company, so much, and then they checked the file. And you know, the best file to investigate is the file that is a dead file, because after getting so much money, you think that even they burned the file. Kumbe the files are just piling there. They are piling and piling and piling. So the person thought, the person went there, looked at the file or whatever, then boarded a plane, went to Cape Town. Going to Cape Town, you see the address of the silo was saying, let's say, 32nd Kiganjo Street. So he went to 37 Kiganjo Street, I'm only giving an example of a local place. So he went to that plot, and you see, according to declaration by Jacob Juma, is that at that place there is a big silo, and you know silos are different from office spaces. So he went to that and found a building, a tall building, which have which are there for office rent. For you even in Kenya we have these people who build office whatever, so that you just rent something to be an office. So Jacob Juma had hired an office space there where you enter and find a receptionist, secretary, and the office of the CEO. And he took that address and printed letterheads to show that their South Africa office was on Kiganjo, whatever road. And that is how he used that to claim. Now, you see, if you are investigating something, these forensic people, they just find like a small mistake, and that is where they find the thing. Because he says that on that 32nd Kiganjo Street, we have a silo which we placed there so many tons of maize. But when the detective went there and found that at that particular place, it was office space. For a lack of a better place to show, I think you know Gill House in Nairobi. Gill House, they are just office blocks and whatever. So when you say that, and Gill House is along Government Road. So if you say that I had a store at that Gill House, a silo or something, and then Nani was paid. Uh, Nani was paid. So that is how the anti-corruption now came and sued the company, came and sued the logistic company for having. Now they were being charged under corruption. And you see, the Wahungu and Waluke are saying, no, we were just shareholders in the company and whatever. And that is what I now want to tell you, that don't just join any company. You can join a company as a shareholder. When they sue the company, you are also sued. You are also sued because there is nothing like a company. It is you as an individual who will find yourself in jail for 67 years. And why did Jacob Juma involve these people? Nowadays, uh, you are allowed to start a company with one director in Kenya. You are allowed to start a company with one director. But about 5 or so years back, you could not. You were allowed to have um, between minimum of minimum of two, yeah, minimum of two directors and a maximum of 7 directors. Minimum of two directors and a maximum of 7. So if you'll find that people wanted to start businesses, they would go and look for somebody, anazuba, mtu zuzu, and they'd place there. As I finish off, I can only tell you that remember, Patni even had companies that I said 2 directors to 7 directors. He even had several companies where his driver was the other director. And the driver even didn't know what was happening, because the driver later came and told the Goldberg Commission that Nani would just call him to the office, show him say sign here, sign here, sign here, showing that, but he never read those things. So the driver was a director in a multi-billion company. So that is how, just like Paul Kamlesh Patni's driver was a director in a company without knowing. The same applies to Waluke and Wahungu, whereby this company was started and they were given maybe one or even two. And you see, for a company that won a case, let's say it won a case of 50 million, and you have two shares, two shares, and the company has a profit of 50 million, it means that you'll just get a cool 1 million. Hivyo hivyo tu. Think smart. So my viewers, in short, that is how Waluke and Wahungu ended up. It has been proven before court that as directors of the company, they are guilty, but in a court of law, you have to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. So they won the case because of benefit of doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, tuonane in the next video.